I rely way too much on this thing to try to lay hold of God. It's the curse of the fall that all of humanity, because of partaking of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that we have elevated knowledge to a position it was never meant to be in. We traded away something beautiful, which was marriage to God. And listen, I've heard this accusation been levied against Christians and Christianity and God Himself, that God is against, knowledge, and, the big sin for man was partaking of the tree of knowledge, and what's the big deal? Is God insecure? Ridiculous. God is not against knowledge, and we need to understand that. He never has been against knowledge. He's against knowledge in the form of information. He's against the kind of knowledge to where we would cut out relationship with God so that we can empower ourselves to be like Him, to know what He knows, but outside of the boundaries of the covenantal relationship He created us for. Said another way, God is into teaching us what we need to know, when we need to know it, in a very practical way so that it doesn't get stuck up here and never has an outlet, but we have what we need in a moment where it can be practically expressed or practically put into use. And I think that's our big struggle in the church. I know it's our big struggle in the church. And when the Lord is pointing to, as Sam brought forth, this word from Acts 2:42, that it is a now season for us, that the Lord would transition us in a progression, Janet, not that we ever abandon the apostles' teaching. We will never get off the ground of needing the apostles' teaching. It's coming into a progression where instead of just being camped out at receiving, teaching, accumulating knowledge, we take a step further and actually begin to engage in fellowship with the one who's bringing forth the knowledge. And I'm not talking about the human vessel. I'm talking about the Lord. And there's a progression even beyond that, from fellowship into communion, and communion into the house of prayer that the Lord established us to be. But we're stuck, you guys. The church is stuck. And the Lord would teach us in time, and let the Lord do it. He has His way. Don't get ahead of the Lord. If I had set out to build, put it like this, if I had set out to build a house for myself before the Lord burned my house down, I would have been out of order. And I'm talking about in the natural. And so in the spirit, we can get ahead of the Lord and try to build when the Lord hasn't finished devastating the structure we've built for ourselves in our minds, Victor. It's got to be completely demolished before He can rightly build on the right foundation. But if we allow the Lord to do it, He will take us into a fellowship. And you guys, I've said this since day one. There's no other purpose for us to exist. As a community, there's no other purpose. If you think about it like this, with divine purpose in view, there's no other reason for us to exist individually, but that to partake of fellowship with the Lord in that covenantal relationship we were created for. Everything else flows out of that. Everything else is secondary. That's the primary. We don't exist to give people a place to come and fellowship on Sunday mornings. We don't. And if that's what we think about this, we need to be rewired. And I'm talking about corporately. We exist to be a community that is coming together and on a journey out to the Lord that we might know Him. But the way of fallen man is that we gravitate towards knowledge. We gravitate towards information. We gravitate towards the elevation of the mind because we chose knowledge over life. And we were appealed to that knowledge by a desire to empower self, that we might be strong apart from the Lord, independent apart from the Lord, all through the pursuit of knowledge. We read what Tozer says, and this will be the last time I quote Tozer today. unless the Lord leads me back to something else.